The wind had a way of speaking on the plains at dusk, low and restless, dragging dust across the earth like a whispered warning. And that evening it moved through the abandoned trail camp as if it already knew the children were alone. 5 of them stood near the rutted road where wagon wheels had carved scars into the ground over years of westward hope. 4 standing, 1 cradled in tired arms, each child too young to understand how quickly a life could fall apart, and yet old enough to feel the weight of it pressing down on their chests. The eldest, a girl barely past 16, held the baby close, rocking slightly as if motion alone might keep fear from settling in her bones. Her dress patched and faded, her hands roughened by work she never should have known. Beside her stood 2 younger sisters and a brother, their faces streaked with dust and worry, fingers linked together like the only fence left between them and the world. Their parents had died within a week of each other. Fever first, then exhaustion and grief, and the wagon that was supposed to carry them onward now sat behind them, like a hollow promise. Canvas torn, axle cracked, no food left but crumbs and prayers. They had waited all day for someone, anyone, to pass, calling out when the sun was high, whispering when it fell low, until their voices grew hoarse and the sky began to bruise purple. Hunger gnawed, but fear gnawed harder, especially when the shadows stretched long enough to hide things children had been warned about in campfire stories. That was when he appeared, a lone figure riding in from the west, horse slow and steady, dust rising behind them both like a trail of fate. He dismounted a short distance away, a tall man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by sorrow, his hat pulled low against the sun, his vest worn soft by years of labor. He studied them in silence, not with suspicion but with a kind of careful sadness, noticing the way the eldest girl shifted her weight protectively, how the smallest child trembled, how the baby's cry was weak with hunger. The children watched him the way wild things watch a hunter, unsure whether to run or freeze, and when he finally spoke, his voice was rough but steady, not unkind. He asked where their folks were, and the girl answered in a voice that broke halfway through, telling him everything in too few words, tears slipping free despite her effort to stay strong. The man listened without interrupting, nodding slowly, and when she finished, the wind seemed to hold its breath. He looked toward the broken wagon, then back to the children, and something shifted in his expression. An old pain waking up, perhaps, or an old promise he thought he'd buried. Years ago he had lost his own family to the land, to accident and winter and bad luck, and since then he had lived alone on a spread miles from town, telling himself solitude was safer than love. He had passed suffering before, offered coin or food, and ridden on. But this was different. This was a crossroads written too clearly to ignore. He crouched so he was level with the children, the leather of his boots creaking, and asked them their names one by one, repeating each as if committing it to memory. The youngest finally stopped shaking when the man removed his hat in respect, and the baby quieted when the man offered a finger for her to grasp. Night was coming fast now, and coyotes would soon sing, and the man knew there was no time for careful plans or half measures. He stood, looked at the eldest girl again, and said the words that would change all of their lives. Words spoken plainly without drama, but heavy as iron. All of you, come with me. The children stared, stunned, the way people do when hope arrives too suddenly to trust. The girl asked where, and he answered simply, home, a word that sounded strange in his mouth after so many lonely years. He told them he had food, clean water, a roof that didn't leak, and work for when they were ready, and that no child should be left to face the night alone. Still, he did not reach for them. He waited, knowing choice mattered, especially now. One by one, the children's hands found each other, fingers tightening, and the eldest nodded, tears running freely now, gratitude and fear tangled together. They followed him to his horse, helping lift the baby, gathering what little they owned. And as they walked away from the broken wagon, the girl looked back only once, whispering goodbye to a life she hadn't chosen. The journey to the ranch was quiet except for the wind and the soft sounds of hooves. The children riding close, warmth shared, trust growing with every mile. When the lights of the ranch finally appeared, lanterns glowing like stars, fallen to earth, the man felt something in his chest loosen, a space long closed beginning to open. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring or how he would manage 5 grieving children when he'd barely managed himself. But for the first time in years, the night didn't feel empty. And as the ranch gates creaked open and the children stepped inside, still holding hands, He understood that family sometimes arrives not through blood, but through choice, through courage, and through the simple act of saying yes when turning away would have been easier. The sun rose over the ranch like a promise, spilling gold across the prairie and lighting the dust in the corral so that it shimmered like tiny embers caught in morning light. Inside the house, the children awoke to smells they had not known for months: fresh bread baking, coffee roasting, and the faint tang of clean laundry hanging near the hearth. The eldest girl blinked against the light, the baby in her arms stirring softly, and for a moment the world felt unreal, as though someone had pressed pause on the endless grief that had shadowed their lives. The man who had brought them here, tall, stoic and weathered, was already up, moving about the kitchen with the ease of someone who knew the rhythm of this land. He greeted them quietly, offering smiles more than words, and began showing them the house, the rooms that would be theirs, the chores that could help them earn a place in this new life. At first the children were hesitant, their trust fragile, shaped by loss and the cruelty of circumstance. But the man was patient. He let them touch the animals, feed the chickens, brush the horses, and work the fields in small ways. He never demanded their affection. He simply offered safety, nourishment, and steadiness. Day after day he taught them skills they had only glimpsed before: how to mend a fence without it falling, how to ride a horse without fear, how to tend a garden so that food grew plentiful even in lean months. And in the quiet moments, he listened to their stories, their fears, their dreams whispered in the dark after chores were done, before bed. Slowly walls came down. Laughter returned in bursts, as unexpected as sunlight after a storm. The eldest girl began to smile again, her arms no longer trembling under the weight of responsibility. The younger children discovering games and jokes they had almost forgotten. Even the baby, once so quiet and wary, began to coo and gurgle, reaching for hands that would never let go. It was not a perfect life. Storms still came, both in weather and in challenges, as children tested limits and grief occasionally returned in waves. But the man met each obstacle with calm, guiding them not with anger but with firmness rooted in love and consistency. One evening, after a long day in the fields, they gathered by the lantern-lit porch, the horizon painting streaks of purple and gold across the sky. The eldest girl held the baby close, the others leaning on her and each other, and the man spoke, his voice gentle, yet carrying the weight of truth. He told them that life would always be difficult, that they might fall and fear might find them again, but that together they were stronger than anything the world could throw. "You have each other," he said, "and you have me, and that is more than enough to start again." The children listened, faces lit by the flicker of light, hearts slowly absorbing hope as if it were water after drought. And in that moment, they knew that home was more than walls or roofs. It was hands held in the dark, words spoken when the world was harsh, protection offered without condition. Seasons changed, and the ranch grew with them. Fields flourished, livestock thrived, and the children matured under the careful guidance of the man who had chosen to step into their lives. They learned resilience, compassion, and strength, but also the softer virtues of patience, joy, and laughter. Years later, when neighbors marveled at how the 5 children had thrived despite tragedy, none of them knew the full story of the night they first met the man who would become their guardian. They only knew the love, the safety, and the family that had been.